2014. And I just to kind of explain a little bit more about what was happening with the U.S. government forcing me to perform sex services to men, and how they used socks as one of their triggers for telling me what to do, basically. And so as I was saying, for a couple of years nobody tried anything or did anything, and then what happened actually was saying Robin Bechtold was part of this government family, the Bechtolds, who had assaulted me. Well, so how did I end up in proximity to Robin Bechtold and a bunch of kids whose parents were sex offenders who worked for the government? You know, not just sex offenders, but torturers. And the only reason that instead of getting trafficked back and forth while I lived in Washington and getting trafficked over to Oregon, or having them come over from Oregon to visit me at my house in Washington, the government moved and relocated my entire family over to their territory. So all of a sudden, we were relocated to the Sherwood-Wilsonville area, so that I would be in the Sherwood School District, and on the Sherwood bus route, and I would be forced to go to Sherwood High School, where George and Janet Bechtold's son was going, who was all grown up now, and who of course I didn't remember or connect to anything, because it had been a long time. The last time that I had seen his mom and dad was when a cop threatened me with my life, and I think that I was around like age 11, maybe at that time, 10 or 11. So it had been some time since I had seen them, and I was trafficked to see them, so I didn't see them on a daily basis, to where I was just I was trafficked around to so many people who worked for the government. It's not like there was just this one person that I could focus all my attention on and be scared of, because I would forget sometimes which one of them was, like which part of hurting me one of these individuals had taken part in. And sometimes I probably tried to block it out. But other times it was just because they would relocate me and put me in a different situation, and I wouldn't recognize anyone. They'd like change haircuts. I would be older, not expecting to see certain people in certain situations with older individuals around. You know, they changed so much of the scenery with it, that and of course, just being a kid growing up and trying to accept, okay, life is normal. Really, life is normal. Okay, keep telling myself that life is normal, and wanting to believe that my life was normal, like I thought every other kid's was. You know, other kids do not have these horrible things happening to them that were happening to me. It's almost like I didn't even really want to believe it myself, even though of course I believed it. I mean, I knew it, but I didn't think about it, didn't dwell on it, because they would force me to move forward and just accept, oh, this stuff never happened, and stop thinking about it, or you get tortured again, and just start acting and living in the present, which is normal right now. So anyway, so if I had even a small amount of normalcy, or I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that right, I would tend to grip onto that and want to believe and keep believing that that was what's normal, and just keep thinking normal, because you know what they had programmed me with is if I didn't, I started thinking about the things they'd done to me or wanted to report things, they'd torture me again, and not just torture me, they'd chain me up, strip me, do all kinds of things, starve me. So, so basically, my family got, my dad was working for Western Craft. Really not sure what kind of a company Western Craft is anymore. And they merged with Weyerhaeuser, which is possibly worse. Weyerhaeuser could be a worse government subsidized company. But I just thought it was a regular job that my dad went to. And it could be that there were plenty of people that were just regular workers at what they thought was a regular job, and that there were just a few government individuals who also happened to work there. But definitely there had to have been a government connection, because my dad got transferred, or as I say, one of these twins or triplets got transferred from the Western Craft plant in Moses Lake, Washington, to one in Beaverton, Oregon. So, and at the time he said, I won't move there if you guys don't want me to. So they even had my dad ask the family if we wanted to move or not. And at the time, the government had done a bunch of crappy things to my whole family, to where it was uncomfortable to even be in Moses Lake, Washington anymore. And I was sort of looking for a change anyway, because of some things that had happened. And, so not knowing that this Sherwood, Wilsonville area was where all these government kids were living, or who I would be exposed to again, I was all for the idea. So I gave in my opinion, not knowing all the extent of it. And then everybody else did too. So then anyway, our entire family moved, and I was suddenly in the Sherwood School District, which Janet Bechtold worked for, and a number of other individuals who had tortured me and were working for the government, who they worked for. And there was a whole group of government kids that were in that same area that we got our house at. And by that time too, I started wondering, do my parents even own any of these houses? Because it seems like my parents end up buying a house or having to buy a house, and then they're fixing it up, and then as soon as it's nice to live in, they're selling it to some government person. So I started wondering, why my parents, and they just call it investment, like getting a house, making improvements on it, and then reselling. So that seemed rational and reasonable to me. But after a while, I just noticed a few other things that stood out too, and I started questioning whether my parents even really technically owned their own property, because things were getting kind of weird. And when you're older, no matter how much someone has a good cover for things, sometimes, what is kind of looking like, what feels like house arrest, is kind of like, it really is house arrest and illegal grounds. So, but I didn't have all these suspicions or whatever when I was going over there. And what happened is, I was on Robin Bechtold's bus route. So here's this guy whose family tortured me, who I was even taken to California, and his grandmother tried to blacklist and bribe me, telling people that, because they tried to frame me as having done something bad to Robin when he was little, and they did that after his entire family attacked me repeatedly. So it was like, they assaulted me when I was innocent, then they wanted some kind of a blackmail dirt on me, and then his grandmother over there was also trying to get the government to make promises that promise me that she will never be able to raise her own child, for example. Like she had a right to ask anyone to promise that. And another was promise me she will never be a doctor. She had some a few things that she was demanding when her family was guilty of criminal conspiracy to torture a kid. And so I remember, that people were agreeing to it. They had FBI there, literally. And they were making these promises to her. So then I end up, as I say, in the Sherwood School District area. And when I was on the bus the first time, I felt someone tapping on my shoulder. And I looked around, and it was my first day on the bus. And I was 15 years old. And there's this red-headed guy, and he kept tapping me on the shoulder wanting to talk, kept trying to spark up conversation. So I give him an answer, and then, turn my face forward and keep minding my own business. So then he tapped me on the shoulder again, and he'd ask me another question. I mean, he's pretty obnoxious, actually. And he made sure that he continued to pursue, which basically was really like stalking, government stalking, and staking me out, basically. Pursue conversation with me and would not give up. And so to not be rude, I tried talking to him, and then he would use techniques to try to flatter me. Later, make me think that people liked me, that I was wanted or special or that kind of thing. But then even when he was doing this stuff on the bus, all of those government kids kept their distance from me when I was first at their school. So like at lunchtime, basically I didn't know which group of kids to sit down and eat with. It was a big cafeteria. Really wasn't sure what kind of group I wanted to have myself connected to, as in this is my group that I eat with, for every day at lunchtime with. And I didn't want to get myself necessarily stuck with a specific group, and I didn't really know who was who, and I felt shy. I felt too timid to, I didn't want to go up to a table and say, can I sit down and eat with you guys? And so rather than make a decision or feel embarrassed by trying to include myself into someone else's territory, I went to the library for the lunch period, and I would sit down at one of their computers. And I started teaching they had some tutorials on their computers on Microsoft, Word, Excel, and other kinds of computer programs. And I would sit down at one of the computers and started learning by going through their tutorials, these different computer programs. And everybody left me alone for a little while, and then as I started kind of getting into it, I was actually starting to enjoy this computer stuff. And not really missing the social aspect of lunch anymore, even. I just thought, this is good. I can get ahead in my computer skills, at least. So there I was, a nerd. And happy nerd. And all of a sudden, then it seemed to be a threat to the government kids. Because when I started to progress in my computer skills, it was like anytime I progressed at anything, they wanted to block me from it. So just at the point that I was really getting into this computer stuff, someone showed up, Alicia Peters, another government kid. His dad works for the FBI. And said, do you want to have lunch with us? Why don't you come over and sit down and eat with us? And, if someone asked me, came specifically into the library to ask me that, what was I supposed to say? Actually, I really like having my lunch in the library, or eating my lunch really fast, and then going to the library and working on this computer. I didn't want to stand out as being really nerdy.